Hello YouTube, Mr. Mags here. A few weeks ago, I made a video where I gave a bunch of Pokemon NPCs that usually don't get to battle full teams of six Pokemon. I really enjoyed making that video. I feel like a lot of you enjoyed watching that video. So I think it's time for me to come back with a new set of Pokemon NPCs and give them full teams of six Pokemon. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the presentation where I do just that. Okay, so here is my presentation where I will be giving more Pokemon NPCs full teams of six Pokemon. So starting with the criteria, it's very similar to last time, just worded a little different just for further clarification. These Pokemon will be picked based on Pokemon that fit their theme or personality, as well as any canon Pokemon they have from the games, anime, manga, etc. I will prioritize Pokemon from their origin, sorry, for the region of origin. Some of these trainers exist across multiple generations. Um, in those cases, I'll do like from every generation they show up in, but the ones that let's say originated from Kanto, I'll prioritize Pokemon from the Kanto region. However, if there are specific Pokemon that I think really fit them, I'll branch out a little bit on a case-by-case basis. But for ones that exist in a region that has a remake or a third version with a more expanded Pokedex, I'll be doing the one that has the more expansive Pokedex. So, for example, if a character I'm talking about first started off in Ruby and Sapphire, I'll give them a team based on the more expanded Pokedex from Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire. These teams will be independent of canon trainer teams as well as each other. And that essentially means I will not be excluding any given Pokemon if it is the ace of any other major trainers, or if it shows up several times on other trainers or even other trainers in this list. All of these characters are the intent is for them to be fought in some kind of post-game fight. So their team doesn't really matter as much. I only really have an issue if an ace is reused if it's within normal gameplay, but if it's some kind of post-game fight, that won't really matter as much. And the team strength and synergy isn't really a factor for these. A lot of these I do think ended up actually being pretty solid teams with a lot of good strategies, but it was not the intent to make all of these some kind of like super boss or like some kind of super challenge. You know, they are intended to be post-game fights, but not necessarily like expressly super hard like tournament level teams. Okay, so before we get started, just know that the first like set of entries here is a little interesting. So when I was creating the list of characters I wanted to make teams for, I had 10 solid teams, and I could have gone ahead and made that video, but I wanted to see if, maybe I can get two or three more. Um, just any last minute new thoughts, just poking around Wikipedia and other places, and I found a something that just brought me on this journey of essentially creating seven more teams on top of three others I came up with later. But so I ended up with 20 different teams to talk about today, and those seven that I ended up making teams for, they're all from Generation 2. So apologies that I think over half of this video will be from Gen 2. But that's just how it is. Maybe in a future video, if there's anyone you feel I missed, you think they took the spot from, maybe I could, make a future video about them. But for right now, I had just a really fun idea for this set of seven trainers that I really wanted to talk about today. And that seven being the Days of the Week siblings from the Johto games. Now, in Gold, Silver, Crystal, and Heart Gold and Soul Silver, on any given day of the week, one of these seven trainers will be somewhere around the region corresponding to the day of the week that they are, that they represent. And if you find them, they will give you a type boosting item. So once I, you know, remembered these characters existed, I was like, okay, can I make full teams of six based on the type boosting item that they give you? And the type boosting items are listed down here. Um, and I'm like, if only one of them, if even one of them can't have a full team of six in either generation, I won't bother. But I ended up making good, pretty solid, I think, full teams of six for all seven of these characters. And I know I kind of mentioned how all of these characters will have teams independent of in-game trainers, but for these specifically, I did kind of use them as a way to kind of implement Pokemon that weren't really used a lot in a canon playthrough of Johto, and that'll also make more sense in just a second. But essentially, when constructing each team, the idea was the Pokemon at the start of their party will be the Pokemon that represents the item the best, as far as like, subjectively, as far as I could tell. And then the Pokemon at the back of their party is the ace. So starting off with Monica having the sharp beak. And all of these have beaks. I specifically went with flying types that have beaks. So no one in particular like really represents the item the best. I just thought it'd be funny for her to have Farfetch in the front. Um, but yeah, I gave her a bunch of bird Pokemon that have beaks that are all flying types. So Farfetch'd, Fearow, Dodrio, Noctowl, Skarmory, Honchkrow. And again, this is based on the Heart Gold Soul Silver Pokedex, so she can have a Honchkrow. If it were Gold and Silver, just switch around Skarmory and Murkrow. So Murkrow would be on the team, the Skarmory would be her ace. Next up, Tuscany. She has the Twisted Spoon, so her entire team should be Psychic types. Alakazam, I felt represented the item the best since he literally holds spoons. Hypno, Jinx, Slowbur, and Slowking, and Girafarig. I thought it would be a lot of fun for her ace to be one that's immune to Ghost, which the rest of her team is obviously very weak to. Um, After I made all seven of these teams, I looked back and realized that Tuscany actually has two different items that she can give you. One in the original Gold and Silver Crystal, and one in Heart Gold and Soul Silver. In Heart Gold and Soul Silver, she hands out the Twisted Spoon, but in the original Gold and Silver, she hands out the Pink Bow, which enhances normal types. So I decided to also give her a team as if you were to fight her in original Gold and Silver, where she has a bunch of normal types. I think it'll be funny if Gramble's the one that represents the pink bow the best, along with Dunsparce, Furret, Stantler, Ursaring, and again, Girafarig. Similar to the Psychic team I gave her, Girafarig is both defensively and offensively good into fighting types, which is something that the rest of the team struggles with. So I think it'd be fun if you barrel through her entire team with a strong fighting type, you get to Girafarig, you can't just one-shot it. I think that's very solid. It is very convenient that there is a psychic normal type for her to have on either team. And I honestly think it is criminal that like Whitney is, really good for the point that she is in the game. However, there are so many other good, solid, just very impressive normal types in Gen 2. It always kind of not annoys, but I just always feel like with Gen 1 when I was doing my Elite Four members video where I said, you could make a good, strong Elite Four member with normal types. You could make a pretty good late gym leader, if not even Elite Four member with normal types. Got Ursaring, Ramble, even, Giraffre wasn't used anywhere. A Dunsparce, if it's like a fifth or sixth gym, I think could still be viable. Along with Miltank. I don't know. I just really like the idea of Ursaring, if not being the ace, being somewhere on one of a team somewhere. I also gave it to Silver in my Rivals Fixed video. But otherwise, if Tuscany isn't here at all, isn't if this team weren't in the games, then a lot of these Pokemon wouldn't really get much use anywhere else. Anyway, moving on to Wesley, who has the black belt. Unfortunately, this is the one I had the biggest hang up on. The only other fighting type that's not listed here in Generation 1 is Machamp. Um, but there are six viable fighting types, and Heracross isn't used anywhere else in the entire game. So I think it'll be a lot of fun if he used Heracross, despite there being two other fighting type, major trainers, with all of all of Chuck's team being here with Primeape and Poliwrath. Uh, but we got Hitmonlee, Hitmonchan, Hitmontop, Primate, Poliwrath, Heracross. Next up, Arthur. He has the hard stone, so I think Golem represents that the best. And then we have Magcargo, Aerodactyl, Shuckle, Corsola, Sudowoodo. This is definitely the weakest team of the bunch. Like Aerodactyl and Golem are very strong. Magcargo and Sudowoodo have their stats min-max, so they're good at what they do, just not, they're not even the best at what they do, and they definitely could be a lot better. I considered giving him Tyranitar. I just couldn't justify him having a Pokemon that was that much stronger than the rest of the other seven. So I kept Sudowoodo as his ace. There were six other, at least, fairly solid, pun intended, rock types that he could have. So it's not a huge deal for him not to have Tyranitar. But ideally T-Tar would be somewhere. But if we're going off of Heart Gold and Soul Silver, Tyranitar does show up on Blue's rematch team, so it is somewhere. Plus, I don't know, I feel like Sudowoodo just fits his vibe very well. Next up, Frida, she has the Poison Barb. And because of that, I gave Beedrill as the one who starts. It was either that or a Quillfish, and I wanted Quillfish to be her ace, so she starts with Beedrill. So then Venomoth, Ariados, Vileplume, Nidoqueen, and Quillfish. Next, we have Santos, who has the Soft Sand. In Gold and Silver, he also had the kind of like Tuscany. He used or he gave out the spell tag. However, there's only two possible ghost types in Generation 2, the being Mischievous and uh, Ghastly. So I couldn't make a full team of six for him as well, but I still think, you know, it wasn't as big of a deal as long as I could make a team for all of them. I went with the whole set. So I could make a very good ground type team for him with Sand Slash, I feel representing the soft sand the best. Donphan, Quagsire, Mamoswine, Nidoking, Gliscor. I know that uh obviously Price would also use either Piloswine or Mamoswine. But considering he is an ice specialist and Santos would be a ground specialist, I think it's perfectly fine for them both to have someone in the Mamoswine line. And then if this were Gen 2 and he used the soft sand in Gen 2, that would be a Piloswine, and then he would have a Gligar and switch around that with Donphan and have Donphan be his ace. But because Gliscor is available in the Heart Gold Pokedex, I went with Gliscor being his ace. Lastly, we have Sunny. His item is the magnet, so we go with Magneton, not Magnezone. For some crazy reason, in Heart Gold and Soul Silver, they didn't designate an area that could allow Magneton and Probopass to evolve. Because at the time, I guess they were tunnel vision on it being specific to Mount Coronet that allowed Magnezone and Probopass to evolve. So they didn't do it like they did in future generations where it's like some kind of power plant or some other kind of area that's magnetically or electrically charged somehow. And then obviously much later in Gen 8, making them just evolve with a Thunderstone. That just makes sense. But because there is no way for him to actually get a Magnezone, he has to keep Magneton here. He can have Electivire. There is the ability to get an Electrolyzer somewhere in the game, but it's impossible for him in either Kanto or Johto to evolve Magneton. So Magneton, Electrode, Raichu, Electivire, Lantern, Ampharos. Okay, moving on to Bill's grandfather. Now, one of the weirdest decisions that Gen 2 made, and there were a lot of weird decisions Gen 2 made, keep that in mind, is for some reason they blocked off the vast majority of um, elemental stones to the post game. You can have access to moonstones earlier, but as far as thunder, water, fire, um, leaf, you cannot access those before this point in the game, before you can finally get to Cerulean City in Kanto. They fixed it kind of in Crystal, where there's a couple of trainers that will call you periodically to give you stones, and then they fixed it even more in Heart Gold and Soul Silver, where you can grind them in the Pokeathlon. But in Gold and Silver, that's the function Bill's grandfather had. You show him a specific Pokemon, and then he gives you a corresponding uh, stone. The Pokemon that you show him does change depending on the generation, and it's a little weird how they did it because in Gen 2, it was Lickitung for the Everstone. I don't know why he gives out Everstone. I feel that just bogs down the because it's every day he has the opportunity to give you a new stone. I feel Everstone kind of just makes people feel like they're waiting even longer in order to get what they've been waiting this long for, but whatever. Um, it's Lickitung for the Everstone, Vulpix for the Firestone, Staryu for the Waterstone, Pichu for the Thunderstone, and then Oddish for the Leafstone. And then in Heart Gold and Soul Silver, it's Jigglypuff for the Everstone, which makes me think they were originally going to change that to Moonstone, but forgot to fix that. I- that might just be headcanon, but that makes sense to me, especially since Jigglypuff isn't even it's a middle stage, so whatever. Um, they kept Vulpix for the Firestone, but then it's Hoppip I believe it's Hoppip for the Leafstone, and I know it's Meryl for the Waterstone, and neither of them evolve with a stone, so I don't know why they are the ones that he wants to be shown, but whatever. Um, all that to say, I did have quite a number of different options to pick from. Um, and that's essentially what I did, where I just picked the Pokemon that he was searching for. So I went with Lickitung, again, not Lickilicky, since you show him a Lickitung in order to get an Everstone, so his Lickitung can't evolve if he's holding an Everstone. I did go with Wigglytuff because I just strongly headcanon, especially if I had the opportunity to, create the game these characters exist in, I would have it where you show him a Jigglypuff and he gives you a Moonstone. And then Raichu, Starmie, Vileplume, and then Ninetales as his ace because as far as I can remember, I can't think of a single other major trainer that has Ninetales as their ace. I think it'd be fun if he had Ninetales there. And the idea with this specifically is um, you can only challenge him to a battle after receiving every kind of stone from him. So I guess like after, assuming he does one every day, you know, you start on a Sunday, and then if you do one a day on Saturday, maybe it can be like, well, um, on whatever the seventh day would be, he would then offer you a battle, and then like once a week after that, or once a day or something, you can battle him. I think that'd be a lot of fun. Um, with the days of the week siblings, I think there is this house that exists on the route leading up to Victory Road that is like essentially their house. I think it'll be fun if after you find all of them, they then go to that house and like with Bill's grandfather, like I said, once you find all of them and go back to that house, you can then challenge each of them to a battle, I guess, on the day you know, that they represent. Or maybe you have to go find them again. But I think it'll be very fun after you find all of them, then you can battle each of them in the post game. We have Copycat next. Copycat is a character that exists in every game that Saffron City exists in. Her whole thing is that she like disguises herself as the player when you first get in there. And then she will ask for a Clefairy doll, or is the Polka doll as it's called in the West. And then she'll give you a specific item or a TM. I mean, it's Mimic in Gen 1, it's Substitute in Gen Let's Go. I think it's also Substitute in no, it's the magnet train ticket. It's something like that. She gives you something in Gen 2, but I know it's Mimic in Gen 1 and then Substitute in the Let's Go games. And I don't remember what it was in Leaf Green Fire Red, but it's something. So her name in Japan is technically the Mimic Girl, but I decided to go all in on her name being Copycat. The logic that I use to build her team can be used either way to switch out one Pokemon for something else. Um, but but yeah, this is the first one where canon Pokemon will be a part of the team. In her room in Red Blue Leaf Green Fire Red, she has a Chansey and a Doduo running around her room. And then in uh uh Gold and Silver, she has a Blissey and a Dodrio, but then Heart Gold and Soul Silver, if you talk to one of her dolls, I believe it like is actually possessed by a Bayonet, which I think is a lot of fun. So I gave her those three Pokemon, Dodrio, Bayonet, Blissey, and then I filled out the rest of her team, all with Pokemon that can learn Copycat by level up. Mime Jr., Smoochum, and Cleffa can all learn Copycat by level up. And then since she's obsessed with Clefairy dolls, I think she should have a Clefable. If you prefer, you go off the Japanese name of her being a mimic girl, she can have Sudowoodo instead of Jinx. I still think Clefable should be here because of the Clefairy doll connection. Um, yeah, I think this is a solid team that represents her well. Now you've seen is the first trainer on either of these lists here who actually does have an in-game team. However, his in-game team is very bad. For some reason, he has a Drowsy, a Haunter, and an Electrode. You only fight him the one time. The first time you find Suicune, you fight him, and then that's it. That team doesn't get to develop at all. It's just three seemingly random Pokemon, and then also Haunter, who is used everywhere in Gen 2. I really don't understand that decision, but that's the team he has. So I decided to rework his team entirely. I said in my previous video where I went over my 30 least favorite teams, he was like number 27 or something like that. I said I would have much preferred his team be comprised of Pokemon that were not represented in the region at all. And a couple of the Pokemon that I picked ended up being that. Some weren't. There's one very notable exception to that, but it followed the logic of how I picked his team. That being because there isn't a lot to go off of outside of his one anime appearance where he has the one Pokemon I was referring to. Um, I decided to essentially make his team kind of logically the same way how they created In's various teams in Black and White, where he just has Pokemon that exist around the routes that you fight him in. So you fight. I'm going to give him teams or give him Pokemon that are found near routes that you encounter Suicune. Then he like shows up, and I would think you fight him every time you would find a Suicune. So you find him once in Seawood City, once they're outside of Mount Mortar. Uh, maybe not right as soon as you get to Kanto, but that route just west of Fuchsia City, and then finally again in the Celadon or Cerulean Cape area where Misty is. I think that'd be cool. You actually see this team develop throughout. So what I did was for Mantine, you find Mantine just east of Cinnabar, not Cinnabar, Cianwood. I think I just said it. Whatever. Where Chuck is, just east of there. Giraffe Freak and Ampharos, they're found near the Mount Mortar slash the Lake of Rage area. They're near Mahogany. Alakazam is the that one exception I was talking about where like I really didn't want to give him one, but he had one in his anime appearance. But also He is said to be originally from Celadon. So I wanted his team to be half full of Pokemon that are found around Celadon. This would maybe be like, a final time you fight him when he's in his home in Celadon, he would have this team. But kind of throughout the rest of the game, you would be developing his Mantine, Giraffe, Frost, and maybe a Meowth. I don't know. He just kind of looks like he would have a Meowth or Persian. It just feels like it fits him fine enough. Um, but Abra, Vulpix, and Meowth are all found on the routes right next to Celadon, so it makes perfect sense for him to have these three Pokemon. I don't love giving him Alakazam. Ideally, he would have a Misdreavus or some other Pokemon that, didn't get a lot of love in Gen 2. But unfortunately, Misdreavus is found nowhere normal. Like I checked, I was diligent in my checking to see if anywhere even kind of close to where you it would encounter you seen is Misdreavus findable anywhere near? No, it's not. Unfortunately, it is not. So Alakazam fits for several reasons. It's not my favorite thing to just give things because a lot of other trainers have them, but it is the only canon Pokemon we know from him, and it still makes sense based on the other criteria I had. So next up, the Trick Master. This is the guy who is the owner of the Trick House in the Hoenn games. So I wanted to give him a full team of six Pokemon that I feel have different kinds of tricks, and that'll make more sense in just a second. Starting off with Ninjask, I think it'll be a lot of fun if this Ninjask specifically, its entire purpose is to baton pass stat boosts to its other Pokemon. So its entire moveset would be Protect, Double Team, Swords Dance, Baton Pass. It doesn't even know an attacking move. So if it does come out last, it's screwed. Maybe you can get rid of Double Team for like Leech Life or Dig or something. Um, but I just think it'd be so fun if it maybe you can like hold a Focus Sash or something, so it's guaranteed um at least one boost. So you try to hit it with something that it can set up Double Team Restore Dance, and it gets a speed boost. It uses Protect, gets another speed boost, and then Baton passes out to one of these other Pokemon. Claydol actually has three solid reasons to be on this team. Um, First, it can use the move Power Trick. That is a move that is really known as Shuckle's move, but a couple other things can learn it. It's the move that switches your attack and defense stats, and Claydol has a lot higher defense than it does attack stats, so I think that could make it pretty useful, especially if it does get benefits from the boosts that Ninjask gives it. Um, it also can use teleport. I don't think it needs to know teleport in the battle, but when at the end of any given uh like maze that you do in the trick house, once you get to the final room, you talk to the trick master, he'll give you the item and then just like fly away, kind of implying to me that he is teleporting. It even has the same little, I think it even has the same sound effect that teleport does when the player uses it. And lastly, it can use Trick Room. This does kind of mess with the idea of him switching or baton passing boosts to Claydol. Like you don't want to have any speed boosts if you're gonna be using a Trick Room set. But if like there are a couple other Pokemon on here that could also benefit from those speed attack boosts, like Lanoon or Shedinja. So someone on this team needs to know Trick Room. Claydol or Kethleon and even Grumpig is not that slow, but any of them can use it. So I think Trick Room should be somewhere on this team. Grumpig, Spoink can learn Trick as an egg move, so I think it'd be a lot of fun if it has a Pokemon that can literally use Trick. Linoon can use Switcheroo. It has the same. It's basically a reskin of Trick where it can take the move it has and give it to the opponent. Maybe have like a Sticky Barb or a Toxic Orb or something, something like that. I think this Grumpig should essentially be a choice specs set where where it knows like you know Psychic, Shadow Ball, Power Gem, and then Trick, which is a kind of fun thing where if you're facing down physical attacker and you trick them, now they're stuck into whatever physical attack they use and they can't even benefit from the choice item boost. And then Kecleon down here, uh, Kecleon can help him camouflage because whenever you go into the room at the start, he's like disguised as an item in his house. And I think it'd be fun if Kecleon kind of like helps him out with that. Plus, like I said, it can use Trick Room. Alternatively, you could just say, oh, the trick of him changing types every time you hit him. I think that kind of still fits with the general idea here. And in Shedinja, I just think that fits the whole idea of the Trick Master so nicely. Like you might get through his entire team, then get to Shedinja, and you just have nothing left that can even hurt this thing. I think that's a lot of fun. Next up, Rydell. I don't know why he looks like that in the manga, but that's what he looks like. Rydell is the character that gives you your bike in the Gen 3 games. And originally, I was like, oh, maybe I should just make his team reflective of the cyclist trainer class from Gen 3. Uh, but unfortunately, all of the cyclists on Cycling Road only use Magnemite and Voltorb, so that wasn't a lot to work with. So then I expanded it to everyone in the triathlete class. There's three different kinds of triathletes. There's bikers, runners, and swimmers. The runners only have Dodrio, so not a lot to work with there, but the swimmers had a few more options that I could work with. So I gave them Electrode and Magnezone. There is a place to evolve Magneton in Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire, so we can have Magnezone. Dodrio, Starmie, and Golduck, two of the Pokemon that the swimmer class uses, and then Magnetric. There were no Pokemon or no trainers in the triathlete class that use Magnetric, but I feel it fits. For some reason, I feel like it fits him well. He his shop is right next to the gym whose ace, uh, the gym whose strongest Pokemon is Magnetric. And I don't know, I just feel like it works here. And I feel it would also make sense for the either the runner or the cyclist class to have magnetic, but um, regardless, I think it does fit here. However, um, if we are to give him what I believe would be his most canon team, this won't do it. This is obviously if he were a fight in Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire, but if he were just given a team based on the entire Pokedex, he should have a Cyclizar. It is literally a bike Pokemon. He would have a Cyclizar. And I also switched out Starmie for Pelipper. I wanted him to have some Gen 3 Pokemon, so I switched out it Starmie for one of the other one of the other water types that the swimmers use. Next up, the Weather Institute professor. This is the guy that gives you the cast form after you save him from either Team Magma or Aqua, depending on the game. And I essentially wanted his team to be all Pokemon that can benefit from at least two, or at least one, preferably two different weather conditions. Starting off with Tropius, its main thing is setting up the sun and then getting a speed boost from his chlorophyll ability. Cacturn can obviously it does the best in the sand with its sand veil ability, but I think it could also potentially use the sun by knowing Solar Beam. And same thing with Ludicolo, where it prioritizes using Rain Dance because it has a Swift Swim and Rain Dish. You can go either way with that. But if the sun were still up, it can still use Solar Beam. Wall rain, it can benefit from the rain by using water moves like Surf, but with his ability Ice Heal and perfectly accurate blizzards, Hail would be what it would prioritize setting up. And then Mag Cargo can benefit from both the sun and the sand, either getting boost with fire moves or the special defense boost from and then no extra damage from the sand. And And then finally, cast form is a cast form. It can transform into whatever um, whatever type it needs. Maybe um, it would be a little weird because I don't know if like if you would just have a cast form have all three weather starting moves, sunny day, rain dance, or three, whatever. Uh, if you would, it would have all of the weather setup abilities, or if it would just pick one. I know it makes generally makes more sense for it just to be like a, for example, rain dance setter, so we can have strong weather ball and also use thunder. I think and like ice beam also is that for coverage, or it could be a sunny day one and have strong flamethrowers. But regardless, cast form is his ace. Yeah. Next up, Scott. Now, Scott was a very funny character to Theorycraft. I kind of went back and forth on what exactly I wanted to do with his team. I knew I wanted him to have something. I knew I wanted to give him a good team, but I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do with it. Um, I was like, maybe I do something like similar to how I did with Ucine, where I give him Pokemon that represent like where he meets you throughout your journey. Maybe I give him a team that represents the different Battle Frontier facilities, but there's more than six Battle Frontier facilities, so I don't really know if like how I can represent all of them without leaving one or two out. So after a while, I came up with an absolutely insane decision that I don't even know if I 100% agree with, but I think it's a lot of fun. So his whole thing is that it is his goal to track down very strong trainers and take them to the battle frontier. That's essentially his entire goal throughout the journey. Your journey is he's, you know, following you and seeing how you're progressing. So I think it would be incredibly fun if his team were to essentially represent all of the different incredibly powerful trainers throughout the region, along with one exception who I'll get to in just a second. So I think he should have essentially Wallace's Milotic, Wally's Gardevoir, your dad's Slacking, Drake's Salamence, Steven's Metagross, and then Smeargle, who is the only Pokemon outside of one Sudowoodo who is catchable on the Battle Frontier Island. And I think it'll be a lot of fun of this Smeargle. Its entire moveset is recharge moves. It knows Hyper Beam, uh, Blast Burn, Frenzy Plant, Hydro Cannon. It can't really do a lot with them since its attacking stats are garbage, but I think that would just be very fun just to see this miracle just blast you with a Hydro Cannon or whatever. I think that'd be very funny. But yeah, like I just think this team having Scott as this super boss character that you could only fight um after you get like the gold medal and all the different facilities. I think that's really cool. Like obviously your team won't really like gain levels while battling in those facilities, but I still feel like it's implied that in order to develop a team strong enough to fight well enough in those facilities to get that far, they're probably going to be at a pretty good level. And I could easily see this super boss character being on the same or similar level as Red from Heart Gold and Soul Silver, like maybe Smear goes on 88 and the others are like 84-ish. I don't know. I think it'd be very funny if, yeah, you have Steven over there, like level 78, but I think having Scott be this guy who, like, the entire time has been looking for strong trainers, be this incredibly strong trainer himself. Again, if you disagree with that, I completely understand. I also kind of had a team plan for if I wanted him to represent all the facilities, but it didn't really come together as well as I would like. And this also more or less represents that. Like the Gardevoir doesn't really as much, but the others are at least used somewhere in those facilities. So it kind of works with that, but just not as strongly as, something else I could have done. But I do really like the idea of him having the aces of what I feel are the five most significant trainers. Next up, we have Looker. This is a character that I wanted to do last time, but it just didn't really come together at the time. But on a second pass through, I think I came up with a team that I really like. Um, I believe he's the only character on this list that exists across multiple generations. So you do originally meet him in Platinum, but I'm not going to give him only Gen 4 Pokemon. I'm going to give him Pokemon that represent every time you meet him across generations. So starting with Gumshoes, it's literally designed to look like a detective, and he is a detective once he shows up in the Alola games. Heliolisk, it was between Heliolisk or Go-Goat. There aren't really a lot of options from Gen 6 that I felt really fit him. Those were the two that like maybe fit him the best, but neither was perfect. So I kept Heliolisk if for no other reason than just to have another special attacker on the team. Arcanine in the anime episodes that he like the little special episodes that he was in, he had a Growlithe. Plus him being a part of the police in the anime, Growlithe and Arcanine are heavily associated with the police force. Zoroark, uh, his whole thing is that he puts on disguises in order to help with his detective work, and Zoroark can help him by literally making him, put on this illusion to make him look like something else. And then Mega Audino is funny because in Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire, you find him just washed up on the beach with amnesia, but the only thing he remembers that he has this Megastone for Audino and he gives it to you. So he clearly at one point had a Mega Audino, or at least had the means to use one. So I think he should have Mega Audino. I didn't expect to use that here, but here we go. And then the only canon Pokemon in the games that we know he has is Krogunk. So Toxicroak. Next up, Fennel. She is the lady who is the professor in Gen 5 who was in charge of the Dream World operation. So I thought it'd be a lot of fun if her entire team is full of Pokemon that can use both a sleep-inducing move and Dream Eater. And I'm lucky that there were at least six Pokemon in Gen 5 that could do both. So Watchog can use both Hypnosis and Dream Eater. Liepard has the ability to use both Yawn and Dream Eater. Audino also Yawn and Dream Eater. Sigilyph, Hypnosis, and Dream Eater. Lilligant, Sleep Powder, and Dream Eater. And then Musharna can obviously use either Yawn or Hypnosis, but also Dream Eater. But even if it can't use either of them, Musharna is the Pokemon that literally represents the Dream World, so she would have one. But yeah, like obviously not all these Pokemon would be Dream Eater wouldn't like benefit them all at equally because it is a special attack and Liepard and Watchog have higher attack stats. But I still think it's a lot of fun for all of them to have some kind of sleep move and also Dream Eater. Next up, Lily. Now, just like with you seen, she does technically have a in-game team in the Ultra Sun and Moon games. She has a Clefairy that she fights along with you during the Rainbow Rocket plotline, and then in the Battle Tree, she can then be fought. She can then like be teamed up with and have a Comfey and a Rabombi. So I extrapolated that into a full team of six, just very cute but also very good fairy type Pokemon. Those being Azumarill, Togekiss, Slurpuff, Rabombi, Comfey, Clefable. I wanted to give her Lunala. I really did, but it just didn't make sense because yes, she does, Nebby is her Pokemon for the majority of the game, but then when it evolves, the player does catch it. It would just be a little goofy for at some point in the future, like especially since this is intended to be like an in-game fight, it would be a little goofy, I think, for her just to have that legendary since the player actually has it. So if you want to headcanon her having that instead of like Azumarill or Slurpuff or something, that's by all means do that. But if these are in-game fights, which is how I'm headcanoning it, it just unfortunately doesn't really make sense. Next up, Mon. He is the father of both Lily and Gladion, and he is the founder, creator, whatever of the Poképelago, which is this like set like series of islands that you can keep your Pokemon in, and they can do various tasks like get items and just stuff like that. So I thought it would be cool if his entire team is made completely out of Pokemon that are found exclusively in the Poképelago area uh, that exists where Pokemon can just show up, and if they stay on that island for I think it's 6 to 12 hours or something like that, they stay around that whole time, then then they join your team. So I think it'd be cool if his entire team is based on those Pokemon. The encounter tables for those Pokemon are different between Sun Moon and Ultra Sun and Moon. So I prioritize Pokemon that show up in both. Not all of them do show up in both, but the vast majority of the Pokemon show up in both Sun and Moon and Ultra Sun and Moon. So Comfey, Crobat, Mismagius. Comfey only shows up, I believe, in Ultra Sun and Moon, but all three of those Pokemon, I wanted him to have at least one Pokemon that represented each of its family members that you encounter throughout. Comfey representing Lily, Crobat representing Gladion, and then Mismagius representing uh, his wife, Lusamine. Lapras, Toucannon, and Pyukumuku. Um, Obviously, Pyukumuku is not a good Pokemon. It can be kind of hard to take down, but also I think it would probably have its innards out ability, which is also not good to have as the final Pokemon because the best you can do is draw with it. Like I don't, it's definitely a gimmick Pokemon, and I don't know. I just feel like it fits in well for some reason. I can't really explain why. Um, Maybe it's just because the fact that I am never going to talk about Pyukumuku ever again unless I randomly decide to give somebody a bunch of gimmick Pokemon. And Pyukumuku is definitely a gimmick Pokemon. Its whole thing is that it can't use a single damaging attack. The closest it gets is Counter and Miracle. And its whole job is just to kind of stall you out, like recovering and refreshing and just, toxicking you and just being annoying the whole time. And then with its innards out ability, once you take it out, it's essentially like a how Final Gambit works, where the amount of health that it had remaining when you took it out, you then take that much damage. So again, not exactly a good Pokemon to end the battle with, but I think it would be a lot of fun for him to have one. Next up, we have Sonia. I kind of wanted to do something with her during the professor's video a few weeks back, but it just didn't really feel like in the spirit of what I was doing at the time. And it even mentioned in that video that I wanted to come back and do her later. So here we are. Her team I kind of did based on a couple of different factors. One, she said in the lore to essentially have been Leon's rival while they were both going on their journey. So I wanted to give her what I believe is just a good, solid playthrough team that, any given person playing through Sword and Shield might have. And she also is heavy in researching just the history of Galar, specifically pertaining to the Darkest Day event. So I wanted to kind of represent that, like, archaeologist, like history buff kind of era. And I'll get to those more in just a second. So starting off with Flapple, in the professor's video, I gave her grandma Magnolia in Appleton, so I think it'd be fun if she had a Flapple. Phalanx, I don't know, I just feel like it fits her well. Maybe the coloring is just kind of similar, but no, I just feel like Phalanx fits her for some reason. Um, Runerigus, that is one of those where I felt, is big into like ancient ruins and stuff, and I feel like, this Pokemon that literally represents these ruins of the region, I think she would find that fascinating. Aurora's, she is found in the Crown Tundra and gives you a quest, I believe, to start finding the Three Musketeers, and eventually leading to Keldeo. So I wanted to give her some Pokemon exclusive to the Crown Tundra and Aurora's. Toxtricity, like I said, her big research thesis thesis was on the Darkest Day event, and it's all but confirmed that Toxtricity is somehow related to Eternatus. I think there's some lore about Toxtricity Gmax form being the first Gigantamax form, but not exactly sure about that. There is that big mural of what appears to be a Gigantamax Toxtricity. So I think we could extrapolate that she would be fascinated enough to get one of those. And then the only Pokemon that we know she has is a Yamper, which I'd say evolves into Boltund. And last but not least, we have Carolus. She is the scientist who restores your fossil Pokemon in the Galar region. But her whole thing is that she doesn't know what she's doing, so she just smashes a bunch of parts together and a Pokemon comes out and it's an abomination. So I wanted to give her the four fossil Pokemon from Gatler and then two other Pokemon that I think are just weird. Those being Galarian Stunfisk and Shuckle. Again, just two kind of gimmicky, weird, just Pokemon that people wouldn't really think twice about otherwise, but I think she would love them. And then Dracozolt, Dracovish, Arctozolt, and Arctovish. I specifically wanted Arctovish to be her ace. Maybe they can all be the same level, but I want her to send out Arctovish last, mostly because in every other instance of making videos like this where I could give someone a um a fossil Pokemon, I either don't give them Arctovish at all, like with Leon and the player characters in the protagonist video, or I don't make Arctovish the ace, just because I feel like all of the others just have more interesting stuff going on. They have more interesting type combinations. Um, but the lore of Arctovish, I think, is the funniest. It's it just like, yeah, it swims, but it can only see forward, but his mouth is at the top, so it has to like weirdly angle. Like, yeah, all of them have their own weirdness, like how Dracovish can run really fast, but it can't breathe on land, and Arctozolt is just always really cold. Um, but yeah, I just think that Arctovish is it's also the Pokemon that almost looks the most like a normal Pokemon. If it didn't have the mouth on top and like the blue part on its face were an actual mouth, I think it actually could work, but unfortunately, it's not. So yeah, I think this would be a very fun team. I think if this were like an actual canon team, like if they were, if it's, somewhere down the line we get a remake or whatever of Galar, I do think if you were to actually fight her, I think she would just have the four fossils and that's fine. But I wanted to fill it out with two other just weirdos that I think she would like. All right, so with that, thank you all so much for watching. Please let me know your thoughts about any of the teams I created today. Do you disagree with any of my choices? Are there any major trainers you feel I left out? If you do feel like there are any left out, please let me know down below. Like I know I said, it could potentially feel like if you have one in mind that I didn't get to, it can kind of feel like one of the days of the week siblings kind of took a spot from that, and I can completely understand that. So please, I would love to hear more suggestions down below. I really liked doing another one of these videos. I would like to continue doing this kind of series for as many characters as I can I can think of. So yeah, let me know all that down below. Let me know other future video ideas you have. Um, and yeah, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you all next time.